Hello, my name is Audrey Swonger, and I'm here to present to you my capstone in 2025. It is Sight and Sound Theater's set design for Elijah. First of all, you must be wondering what set design is. Well, set design is a specific type of interior space design. It is used to create a specific space for specific people who have specific needs. It is not for commercial use, and it often shifts throughout a short period of time in order to tell a story. Now that we understand have a basic understanding of set design, let's go into what we'll be talking about today. Today, we'll be understanding my story, how it affected this capstone, and why it is important. Next, we'll be going into sight and sound and what they stand for, as well as the story of Elijah, and then how these can be combined into one vision for sight and sound. Next, we'll go into the backstage crew, who is the people who make this possible. And then lastly, we'll go into the designs that I have. So when I was a little girl, I had a dream. I wanted to become an actress. When I was in elementary school, I had my big break when I was cast in The Little Mermaid as a fish. Now, this wasn't a very big role, but it got me into theater, and I stuck with it from middle school till high school. And in high school, that's where I got my big role as the Wicked Witch of the West. Unfortunately, after this, I had to start focusing on my academics as well as sports a little bit more, especially since it was during COVID. However, once I reached college, I was able to stay connected to theater by watching with my family as well as helping out backstage. It was important to me to stay connected to theater because I was in sports medicine at the time. And if you can't tell, I am not in sports medicine anymore. So, how was I able to go from sports medicine to industrial design? Well, I saw this play at Sight and Sound Theaters. The David play was an amazing experience for me, and it really changed my view of the arts. This is the big moment where I realized that this could be a career that I could have. And this is what this is the giant animatronic of the giant Goliath. Seeing him really brought to life the story of David for me. So when I was tasked with the assignment to think of a capstone idea, I immediately thought of creating a set design for sight and sound theater that is immersive for the audience, but still shows the functional aspects for actors and stagehands. So, who is sight and sound, and what do they do? A lot of people don't hear of sight and sound. Well, Sight and Sound is a large playhouse and has two locations with extremely elaborate sets. Their Christian values bring in over a million guests each year, and having family family values also brings in a lot of families. So you see people from all age ranges, from young to old. They also employ over 700 people for both of their sites. They have 50 cast members for each play, roughly, and then about 20 stagehands for each play, and then 75 animal actors that they have on hand to use throughout their different plays. And lastly, this all comes together on a 300-foot panoramic stage that can tower over 40 feet tall. So now that we know about sight and sound, let's get into what they have their plays about. They often do their plays about Bible stories, keeping with that family oriented and Christian values. Some of the plays they've done in the past include Esther, David, Noah, and Moses. But who do we not see here? We don't see Elijah. Elijah was a main prophet found in First and Second Kings, and is well known for many different miracles, including um, stopping rain for 3 years, causing a drought, and also being fed by ravens during this hard period, and also providing for a widow oil and flour for the hard times, and also raising that widow's son from the dead. Elijah also protested the current gods at the time through trials of fire, and he also brought back the rain that he had banished from Israel 3 years previously. Elijah also parted the Jordan River and then finally ascended to heaven in a fiery chariot. All in all, Elijah has a very impressive story that has a lot of biblical context and would fit well with Sight and Sound's vision. It also gives enough content for a 2.5 hour play, which is what Sight and Sound is known for. The miracles also lend themselves well for a imaginative and amazing story that could amaze any audience. But this is a lot to work on in one capstone season, so I focused my attention on Elijah and the priests of Baal. This story in particular starts with King Ahab, the king of Israel at the time, and Elijah trying to decide whose God is real, Baal or Yahweh. Baal was the current god of the Canaanites at the time, and the god that Ahab worshipped along with Queen Jezebel. Israel at the time was not supposed to be worshiping this god, but instead they were supposed to be worshiping Yahweh. So, to prove which god was real, they had a contest between the two gods using sacrifices on top of Mount Carmel. These sacrifices were not to be lit by any man, but by the gods themselves. So when the 500 priests of Baal started worshiping and chanting for their god Baal to light the sacrifice, Elijah taunted them because it took so long. They worshiped from morning till noon till night, with no response from Baal. But when it comes to Elijah's turn to worship God and pray to him, he reconstructs the altar of Yahweh and then soaks it in water with 12 jugs of water, which is a little counterintuitive for the goal that they have. However, when Elijah calls upon Yahweh, Yahweh answers with fire from heaven, lighting the sacrifice and the stones on fire. This story was a great story to choose for the play, for the scene that I wanted to do, because of the miracles that it had, as well as the special effects that could happen during this play. And then it's also one of the more iconic stories from Elijah. Some of the things that I had to focus on and were notable to me while I was reading this story was the god Baal and the altar of Yahweh, because it was soaked in water and covered in fire in this scene. So, how would I take this story into a play? That's where the director's vision comes in. The director's vision is to use to combine what you see from the Bible and turn it into a production. So first we would start with the lights down low, and then they raise over onto one of the side stages of Sight and Sound, where you would see Elijah and King Ahab talking about whose God is real. Once they finish that scene, the lights would go down and your focus would be brought to the main stage, where the priests of Baal are gathering to dance and chant and sing to their God. Sight and Sound is known for their musical numbers as well, so having this as a musical number could be impactful here. Elijah interjects every once in a while, taunting them, trying to goad them about their God, but they keep singing and dancing till night. When Elijah's turn comes, the other side of the stage will light up, where you can see men gathering stones to build the altar. The altar is reconstructed in order to worship Yahweh, and then others come in to bring the 12 jugs of water that the altar is soaked in. Then Elijah is able to pray to Yahweh, focusing heavily on the reverence that they would have for Yahweh at the time. When after he prays, Yahweh answers with as the lights flash and the gods idols fall over and the altar is lit on fire, showing the power of Yahweh. The lights start coming back up slowly, where the rains from the drought start again representing God's power. It ends in a very dramatic scene with with Elijah standing in the middle, praising Yahweh. And that would be the ending scene to Act One. And that would be a fantastic scene because it is so dramatic and it brings a very climactic end to the first act. Now let's go backstage and see who makes all of this come to life. There are a lot of different departments within theater. However, the ones that work the most closely with set design include lighting, choreography, and engineering. Lighting so that the audience can see the stage, choreography so that the actors know where to go on the set, and then engineering to actually build out the set. Some of the set requirements from the director's vision included 6 different set pieces, such as Baal's high place, Baal's altar, the idol of Baal, Asherah poles, Mount Carmel, and Yahweh's altar. Some of these set pieces also have technical engineering inside of them to create the effects that we want, including the idol of Baal and the Asherahs falling over, and then also all of the technical special effects that Yahweh's altar would have, including assembly on stage, being drenched in water, and then lit on fire. So let's see how we design these pieces. First, we have Baal's high place. Baal's high place was a common occurrence within Israel and was found on top of Mount Carmel because the high places were in high places to show and to get the worshippers of Baal as closest to the gods as possible. As I ideated on this piece, I had to decide on what shape to go with and what would be the safest for the actors. I finished and decided on a round piece to allow the actors to dance around the altar of Yahweh or the altar of Baal, and it would lend itself well to a ritualistic type of dance and song. The platform pieces would be wide enough so that actors wouldn't fall over the edge, as well as having a dark ring around each edge to keep the actor safe and so that they could see the outline of the platform and not fall over the edge. There are also stairs for access on the sides that are stylized so that they won't be a tripping hazard for the actors. This also helps with getting up and down the terraces safely. Altogether, this creates a very cohesive look that has a center point on the top where the altar would sit. Baal's altar would sit on top of this, and the altar is well known for the horns that is on top of it, as well as the stone that it is made out of, and it's very rigid structure, so keeping that in mind while I was designing was very important. As I ideated on the altar of Baal, I wanted a more structured look to symbolize how this is a man-made religion, and it is a lot different from the way people worship Yahweh. The horns also show up on this design, which is very similar to the Jewish altars at the time. These horns are made out of bronze to draw attention to them, as well as just make them pop out of the altar. Then the bronze material makes its way back down to the center of the altar, just showing how much reverence they would have held for Baal and how high status he would have had. The white stone that it is made out of would contrast nicely with the platform that it sits on top of, while drawing attention to the altar and also showing that Baal is trying to be really holy and just give this very holy feeling to the altar. The idol of Baal, which is the next piece I had to ideate on, was a very important piece because this was the icon of the god at the time. This was their main god. He was associated with lightning and storms, as well as fertility and prosperity, because of the life giving rains that the storms would have. He is also depicted with a raised arm to symbolize his warrior status, along with lightning, and then with bull's horns and often a conical hat to show his status as the highest god. Bringing all of these icons together was difficult because I wanted to keep with the stylized statues at the time. They weren't exactly the most realistic, so having that was very important, as well as the bull's horns and making this god look very intimidating. Another important aspect was when he falls over during the peak of the scene. Making sure that this was safe for the actors was very important. So I had to ideate on an inner structure, which would be made out of aluminum to keep all the pieces together while it is falling over and to make sure that it is stable and won't fall apart. It would sit on top of a platform, which would help bring it down in a controlled manner for the stagehands to use. And it would also have a pole in the middle to connect it to the platform where there is mechanical housing for the falling effect. This would be done with a box underneath and would have a lid where the statue would connect with the pole, and the mechanical hinges would lift the statue and push it over, essentially. There's also a mechanical box on the inside which holds all of the technology for this, allowing it to be safe for actors in a controlled manner. This statue would be made out of a bronze-like material, and just to show how much they worshipped this god and revered him to make such a wealthy material for their statue. There are also a lot of icons to denote his status and identity, such as the wheat for his prosperity, as well as the bull's horns, the conical hat, and the lightning and rain icons, and the storms throughout his figure. Next, we have the Asherah poles, who represent the goddess Asherah, the concubine to Baal. She was the mother goddess of the time and represented the earth, fertility, motherhood, and childbirth. She is often depicted very tree-like to show her connection to the earth, as well as her life-giving capabilities, and being a very feminine goddess because of her role as the mother goddess. Keeping her stylized was also very important, so basing her off of the pictures that you just saw was very important to me, and bringing those very tree-like elements into her design were very important for this goddess to show who she is and making her very intimidating. She also falls during the peak of the scene, so having her with the aluminum structure on the inside was very important as well to help keep her together, as well as supporting the delicate branches and roots that she has. She will sit on top of a platform with her roots sprawling across it, and that will allow her to fall over and house all the mechanics underneath of her as well. Her mechanical box would be right underneath her roots and nestled in between that, along with a pole that runs through the entirety of her figure to help support her. The mechanical box would be very similar to the one underneath Baal, but it would be more round to fit underneath of her roots, as well as connect to her roots in a very specific way in order to get her wide base to help fall over. The roots would sit on these would be connected to these where the circles are, um, noting that half of them in the back are on top of the lid so that it will fall with the rest of the statue where it connects. And then some of them are on the base of the mechanical box so that they stay in place while the rest of the statue tumbles over. The mechanics on the inside would be very much the same as the idol of Baal, just to make it easier on the engineers as well as, yeah. Altogether, this makes for a very safe environment for the actors as these huge statues would fall over, as well as make sure that the cues would be on time each time for every play. Lastly, we have the images of Asherah where you can see her tall figure and the intimidating branches and roots that she has that make her seem larger than life. Her delicate roots would help bring some support to the base of this statue, as well as bringing the tree-like elements into her. She has a very bark-like material that would be on the outside, again, to show how she'd be made out of wood, like the Asherah poles of the past. And then we have the headdress to show her status as the mother goddess made out of tree branches, as well as a very feminine figure in form to show her mother goddess status. Lastly, we have Yahweh's worship site consisting of first Mount Carmel. Mount Carmel was a very important site in northern Israel at the time and was a symbol of fertility and beauty because of its heavy vegetation. It is a very rocky area with cliffs and caves. So ideating upon this was very difficult to make sure it didn't overwhelm the Baal worship site while still giving a large enough presence for the god Yahweh. Making it out of a rocky material was very important to stay with the Mount Carmel theme, where it is very rocky but heavily vegetated, so it has trees on top just to fill out the stage a little bit more. And it also has platforms on top of it so that the actors can interact and be on top of the set piece safely. To get onto those platforms, they would have a system of stairs and ramps so that they can safely get on and off the platforms. And then if you turn to the back of this piece, it would have a cave structure underneath. So it could be used for another scene where Elijah is hiding in the caves of Mount Horeb from the King Ahab. This allows for saving space in backstage areas, as well as just using materials wisely. There's also a separate smaller platform that goes in front of the main piece of Mount Carmel, and this is where Yahweh's altar would sit. Yahweh's altar was an extremely important piece because of all of the special effects that went into it, as well as making it biblically accurate, because this is Yahweh's altar. There are lots of different versions of Yahweh's altar, the main one being the one in the temple, which is described as having horns on each of the four corners and being made out of one piece so that the altar was together. However, the altar that is described in the book of Elijah for this scene is made spontaneously and consists of 12 different stones because it was deconstructed and then reconstructed by Elijah's men during the worshiping. I wanted this to look very natural in order to convey how this is the one true God who made nature and is very connected to people as well as the earth. Having that tapered edge also helped soften the look to the altar, while keeping that stone-like material was very important, as well as the horns, similar to the Canaanite altar. All the special effects that went into this, including water, fire, and reconstruction, were very important for this. So thinking through this was very important to me. Having the stones fit together like puzzle pieces was a difficult challenge, and making them so that they fit perfectly to create a cohesive structure was very important. These would be stuck together by magnets to make it easy for actors to assemble and disassemble while on stage. In the middle of this piece is would house the main tech technologies inside of it, so it could have all of the special effects. Starting off with the being drenched in water, it has a funnel on the top of it where it would hold water and collect it into a reservoir that sits on in the inside of the piece, along with a drain hole for easy reset for the actors or stagehands afterwards, and so that they can use it for next plays. It would also consist of a LED lights along with a fog machine in order to show the fire effect. It is used frequently throughout theater to use smoke lit up by lights to create a fire effect. This would be easily accessed from the side panel, which allows for maintenance as well as resetting the fog machine for the next play. The stones that this piece would be made out of are separate and look very natural when separated and not together, which then come together to make one cohesive altar with the four horns on each piece being a part of the piece so that they weren't a separate item according to the Bible, as well as that beautiful stone texture, which just shows the difference between Yahweh and Baal and how different the worshiping is for each of these gods. Together, Mount Carmel and the altar make a beautiful, serene place to worship Yahweh that would make you feel calm and relaxed, in contrast to the Baal worship site, which is very intimidating and very cold and very harsh because it is a different way of worship at the time. So now that we've understood the people and processes that go behind set design, I would like to present to you Elijah by Sights and Sound Theater. Being able to do a project that reflected on the skills that I have learned at ICC while also being able to tie in to a particular passion of mine was an incredible experience. It was also amazing to bring the story of Elijah through sight and sound to life, and it was an incredible experience that I will never forget and hope to make a career out of in the future. Thank you for joining me as I spoke about Elijah and the prophets of Baal.